Good people aren't born. They're grown. My name is Kai. I'm 10 years old. And this is the story of 30 days, 30 seeds, and how my mom taught me to be a person I could actually live with. It started on a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday that feels like it's dragging its feet. The air was too humid, my backpack was too heavy, and I was just drifting through the school hallways after the final bell. I stopped by the lockers to grab my gym shoes. That's when I saw them. A pack of Galaxy Guardians holographic trading cards. They weren't mine. They were sitting right on top of Jamal's textbooks. His locker door was wide open. The hallway was completely empty. The foil on the pack was catching the fluorescent light, shining like a little mirror. I looked around. Nobody was looking. The school was quiet. I told myself it didn't matter. Jamal had a million of these cards. He wouldn't even notice they were gone. It was just a piece of cardboard. It was just a quick thrill. So I looked left. I looked right. And I put them in my hoodie pocket. My heart was beating so loud I thought the security camera in the corner could hear it. I zipped the pocket. I walked out of the school. I kept my hand pressed against my leg the whole way home. That's the fast choice. My mom always says lying is fast. Truth is slow. But only the slow choice lets you sleep at night. I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that my pocket felt heavy, and my stomach felt like it was full of cold water. Pause 2 seconds. When I got home, I dropped my backpack on the kitchen table. I just wanted to get it out of my sight. But when the bag hit the table, the zipper slipped. The foil pack of Galaxy Guardians slid out and landed on the wood. My mom, Nia, was standing by the sink. She works the night shift at the county hospital, so she had just gotten home. She was still in her blue scrubs. She looked exhausted. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her hair was pulled back in a messy clip. But when she turned to look at me, she always looks at me like I'm the only thing in the room. She walked over and picked up the pack. She turned it over in her hands. She said, "New cards." My throat felt dry. I swallowed hard. I said, yeah. Jamal gave them to me." She didn't say anything right away. She just rubbed her thumb over the foil. Then, she pointed to the corner of the pack. There, written in thick black Sharpie, were the letters, Jamal W. She looked up at me. Her voice was very quiet. She said, "That's nice of Jamal. Mind if I text his mom right now to say thanks?" My stomach dropped straight to the floor. The cold water in my belly turned to ice. I panicked. I said, "Don't. Please don't." He said not to tell anyone. "It's a surprise. If you text her, you'll ruin it." My mom didn't yell. She didn't cross her arms. She didn't even look angry. That would have been easier. Anger I understand. But this quiet look. It was worse. She just turned around and walked to the pantry. I heard the creak of the shelf. She came back a minute later holding a glass mason jar. It was an old pasta sauce jar, but the label was peeled off. Inside, it was full of dried, raw sunflower seeds. She set the jar on the table next to the cards. She said, "When I was your age, I stole a tube of grape lip gloss from the corner store. It cost $2. I thought I was so smart. My mom caught me because I tried to use it to pay for a soda the next day." She pulled out a wooden chair and sat down. She gestured for me to sit, too. "I Saturday." She said, "My mom didn't yell at me. She didn't ground me. She just went to the garden, picked a sunflower, and took out the seeds. She gave me this exact jar. She said, 'Nia, good people aren't born. They're grown. 30 days. 30 seeds. Each day you do the hard work to be good, we plant one. On day 30, we see what grows.'" She slid the jar of seeds across the table to me. Then, she reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and set it next to the jar. She said, "You stole today, Kai. You lied to my face. So today, we don't plant. Today, the jar stays empty." I looked at the seeds. I asked, "So I'm grounded? Do I lose my tablet?" She shook her head. She said, "No. Grounding is for when you break a rule. This is for when you break your own character. You're not grounded. You're unemployed. Being a good person is your job now. And your first shift starts right now. She held out the stolen cards. And she pointed to her phone. She said, "Call Jamal. Tell him the truth." Day 1. Own it. I stood on Jamal's front porch, and my face was burning hot. The sun was in my eyes. I held out the crumpled foil pack. My hand was shaking a little. When Jamal opened the door, he looked confused. I didn't make excuses. I didn't say I found them. I didn't say my dog ate them. I just looked at his shoes and said, "I took these from your locker. I'm sorry. I wanted them, and I took them." He was quiet for a long time. I waited for him to yell. I waited for him to slam the door. Instead, he just reached out and took the pack. He looked at me, really looked at me, and nodded. He said, "Thanks for bringing them back, Kai." Then, he held out his fist. I bumped it. Walking home, my shoulders felt lighter. The cold water in my stomach was gone. That night, my mom came into my room. She held the mason jar. She took one single sunflower seed from the pile and dropped it into the glass. Plink. It was a tiny sound. But it sounded like a bell. She said, "Sorry fixes the mistake. Owning it fixes you. Good first day, Kai." Pause 2 seconds. Day 3. Notice people. The lesson for day 3 wasn't about a big mistake. It was about paying attention. I was walking into school in the morning. The hallway was chaotic. Kids were shouting, slamming lockers, running to class. Up ahead, Mr. Cole, the school janitor, was pushing a massive, overflowing grey trash bin. The wheels were squeaking. He was pushing it with his whole body, trying to get it through the double doors before the bell rang. But the doors were heavy, and they had a hydraulic arm that was trying to pull them shut. Mr. Cole was losing the battle. The door was inching closed. Normally, I would have just walked past him. Everyone walks past him. He's just part of the background. But I remembered my mom's words. Notice people. I broke into a sprint. I slid across the linoleum floor and grabbed the heavy glass door just before it clicked shut. I held it wide open. Mr. Cole stopped pushing. He leaned against the bin, catching his breath. He looked at me, surprised. I said, "You got it, Mr. Cole." He wiped his forehead with the back of his hand. He smiled, and it completely changed his face. He said, "I do now. Thank you, Kai." I didn't even know I knew his name. But I did. That night, my mom dropped the second seed in the jar. "Plink," she said, "invisible people keep the world visible. You saw him today. That's the work." Pause 2 seconds. Day 5. Choose hard. Recess. Kickball. I was the team captain. The red dust of the playground was kicking up in the air. The sun was beating down. My best friend, Marcus, was standing right next to me. He was fast. He was a guaranteed win. But then I looked across the field. Ben was standing by the fence. Ben has heavy metal braces on both his legs. He walks with a limp. Nobody ever picks Ben first. Usually, he's the last one left, and he spends the whole game playing right field where nobody hits the ball. My stomach felt weird. If I picked Ben, Marcus would be on the other team. We might lose. The other kids would groan. I looked at Marcus. I looked at Ben. Ben was looking at the ground, kicking at a rock, already expecting to be left for last. I took a deep breath. I pointed across the field. I said, "Ben, you're on my team." The other team groaned. Marcus rolled his eyes. But I walked over to the fence and tapped Ben on the shoulder. When Ben looked up, his face, he looked like he'd just opened a pack of holographic Galaxy Guardians. He smiled so big I thought his face would break. He didn't care about winning. He just cared that he was chosen. We didn't win the game. But Ben caught a fly ball in the 3rd inning, and he screamed with joy. That night, the 3rd seed went into the jar. Plink. My mom said, "Goodness is who you pick when no one's clapping. You picked hard today, Kai. I'm proud of you." Day 7. Easy money. I was in the library during study hall. I was looking for a book on marine biology, and I pulled a heavy encyclopedia off the bottom shelf. Tucked between the pages, right in the middle, was a folded-up $5 bill. I looked around. The librarian was at the front desk, typing on her computer. The aisles were empty. $5. That was enough for a large slushie and a bag of spicy chips at the corner store. Nobody saw me find it. It was just sitting there. It was basically a gift from the universe. I slipped it into my pocket. It felt good. It felt really good for about 6 seconds. Then, it started to feel heavy. It felt like a hot coal against my leg. Every time I walked, I thought about the person who lost it. Maybe it was a kid who saved up for a month. Maybe it was a teacher who dropped it. I couldn't spend it. The slushie would taste like guilt. I went back to my desk. I took out a piece of lined paper and a thick marker. I wrote in big letters, "Found $5 in library. Describe the fold to claim." I taped the signs up by the water fountain, outside the main office, and on the cafeteria bulletin board. During lunch, a little girl from the 2nd grade came up to me, crying. She told me she folded the bill into a tiny triangle because she wanted it to look like a boat. I gave it back to her. She hugged my arm and ran off. That night, the 4th seed dropped into the glass. Plink. My mom told me, "Easy money is expensive to your soul. You paid the cost today. You bought your peace of mind back." Day 10. Words. I had spent 2 whole hours building a massive Lego spaceship. It had working landing gear and a detachable cockpit. It was a masterpiece. I set it on the edge of the coffee table to go get a glass of water. When I came back, it was in pieces. My little sister, Mia, was sitting on the rug. She's 4. She was holding the cockpit, looking terrified. She had tripped over the rug and knocked the whole ship onto the hardwood floor. I opened my mouth. I was going to yell. I could feel the mean words right there, bubbling up in my throat. I was going to tell her she was clumsy. I was going to tell her to get out of my room. I was going to make her cry. But then I looked at her lower lip. It was already trembling. She knew she messed up. She was already punishing herself. If I yelled, I would just be adding to her pain. I closed my mouth. I took a deep breath through my nose. I let the angry words dissolve. I knelt down on the rug next to her. I said, "It's okay, Mia. Accidents happen. We can build it again. Do you want to help me find the landing gear?" Her lips stopped trembling. She nodded. She threw her little arms around my neck and hugged me so hard I almost fell backward onto the rug. That night, the jar was 1/3 full. My mom dropped the 5th seed in. "Plink," she said, "you can't put toothpaste back in the tube." Same with words. Once they're out, they're out. You kept the cap on today, Kai. Good job. I started looking at that jar before bed. It didn't feel like a punishment anymore. It felt like progress. It felt like a map. Day 13. Guard the absent. I was sitting at the lunch table with Marcus and a few other guys. A girl named Sarah walked by. She had a weird haircut, and she always wore these bright, mismatched socks. One of the guys at the table, Tyler, snickered. He said, "Look at her socks. Does she get dressed in the dark?" The table laughed. It was easy to laugh. It was the fast choice. But I looked at Sarah's back as she walked away. She was alone. She couldn't defend herself because she wasn't there to hear it. I didn't laugh. I put my fork down. I looked at Tyler and said, "She's nice, man. Lay off." Tyler stopped laughing. He looked at me like I was crazy. He said, "Relax, Kai. It's just a joke." I said, "It's not a joke if only you think it's funny. Leave her alone." The table got quiet. Tyler rolled his eyes and changed the subject. Nobody laughed at Sarah's socks for the rest of the year. That night, the 6th seed went in. Plink. My mom said, "It's easy to be brave when the person is looking at you. It's hard to be brave when they aren't in the room. You guarded her today." Day 18. The bruised seed. This was the day I almost quit. It was pouring rain. I came home from school, and my hoodie was torn at the shoulder. My cheek was red and stinging. I was holding my own personal deck of Galaxy Guardians cards, and half of them were bent and ripped. My mom was in the kitchen, making tea. She took one look at me and put the kettle down. She asked, "What happened?" I threw the bent cards on the table. They slid across the wood and hit the mason jar with a clatter. I said, "Those 8th graders. The ones who always pick on the younger kids. They were behind the bike racks. They were taking Jamal's cards again. The same ones I returned." She said, "And?" I was shaking. I was so mad. I said, "And I told them to stop. I told them to give them back. And they shoved me into the fence. And Jamal ran away because he was scared. And they ripped my cards." I pointed at my torn hoodie. I did the right thing. I stood up for him, and I got shoved, and my cards got ruined, and Jamal didn't even say thank you. Day 18 is stupid. The jar is stupid. I don't want your seed. Being good doesn't pay off. My mom didn't say anything for a long time. She just looked at me. Then, she walked over to the sink, turned on the cold water, and soaked a clean dishcloth. She came back and gently wiped the dirt and blood off my cheek. It stung, but I didn't pull away. Then, she rolled up the sleeve of her scrub top. She has a scar on her forearm. It's long, faded, and jagged. I had never asked her about it. She said, "Night shift. County General. 2019. A man came into the ER bleeding from a gunshot wound to the leg. He was scared, and he was yelling. He didn't have insurance, and he was undocumented. My supervisor pulled me aside. He said, 'Let security handle him. He's not our problem. We don't have the bed space.'" She looked me right in the eyes. She said, "I looked at that man. He was crying. I treated him anyway. I stitched him up. I wrote up the supplies I used and logged them as emergency wastes so billing wouldn't flag it. I got a formal warning in my personnel file. I almost lost my job, Kai." I was quiet. I looked at her scar. She said, "Kindness that costs you nothing isn't kindness, baby. It's just decoration. It's easy to be good when it's cheap. Real goodness costs you something." I whispered, "But you got in trouble." She said, "And that man's alive. He went home to his kids. You tell me what I got." I didn't have an answer. She walked over to the jar. She took out a seed. But this one was different. It was cracked down the middle. The shell was split. She held it up to the light. She said, "This is the bruised seed. My mom told me about these. She said the cracked ones grow the strongest. Because they already know how to survive being broken. They know what it costs to push through the dark." She dropped the cracked seed into the jar. Plink. She said, "You didn't get nothing today, Kai. You got to be you. You didn't run. That's not nothing. That's everything." I looked at my ripped cards. I remembered something. Right before the 8th graders left, when they were walking away, Jamal had peeked out from behind the brick wall. He had looked at me, and he had mouthed the words, "Thank you." I told her that. My mom smiled. A real, proud smile. She said, "See? The harvest is already starting." That was the first night I didn't wait for her to drop the seed. I picked it up myself, and I planted it. After day 18, something shifted inside me. The jar wasn't a chore anymore. I started looking for seeds. I started hunting for them. My mom didn't have to tell me what to do. I just wanted to fill the glass. Day 22. Teach. Don't just return. I realized that just giving Jamal his cards back on day 1 wasn't enough. That was just returning stolen property. That was the bare minimum. So, on a Saturday, I invited Jamal over. I didn't just hand him the deck. I sat on my bedroom floor and I taught him how to actually play the game. I showed him the attack rules. I showed him how to combo the holographic cards. We traded. We argued about the rules. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. My mom brought us some orange slices. She stood in the doorway for a minute, just watching us. Later that night, she dropped the seed in. Plink. She said, giving stuff back is easy. Giving your time, your Saturday, your patience, that's the real work. You didn't just give him his property back, Kai. You gave him your friendship. Day 25. Show up. A massive thunderstorm hit the town on a Friday night. The drainage pipes clogged, and the school gym flooded with 3 inches of muddy water. On Saturday morning, I rode my bike to the school. I saw Mr. Cole through the big glass windows. He was in there alone, pushing a massive squeegee, trying to get the water toward the drains. His back looked so tired. He was moving so slowly. I went home, put on my old yellow rain boots and my thickest rubber gloves, and I rode back. I walked into the gym. The air smelled like wet dust and mildew. It was freezing. Mr. Cole looked up, surprised. He said, "You don't have to be in here, son. It's gross work." I picked up a spare squeegee. I said, "I know. That's exactly why I am." We worked for 3 hours. We didn't talk much. We just pushed the water. My arms burned. My boots squelched. But when we finally got the floor mostly dry, Mr. Cole bought me a massive pepperoni pizza from the place next door. That night, the seed went in. Plink. My mom said, "Showing up when it's ugly is the highest form of respect. You saw his burden, and you helped him carry it." Day 28. Good people correct each other. We were in the drive-thru at the coffee shop. It was raining again. My mom had just worked a 14-hour double shift at the hospital. She was running on 0 sleep and pure caffeine. Her hands were shaking on the steering wheel. We pulled up to the window. The cashier, a teenager who looked just as tired as my mom, handed her the cup. My mom took a sip. She spat it out. She looked at the cup. It was whole milk. She had asked for oat milk. She is severely lactose intolerant. She snapped. She leaned out the window and said, "Is it really that hard to read a cup?" I specifically said oat milk. "Do you even listen?" The cashier's face fell. He looked humiliated. He started stammering an apology. It got real quiet in the car. The rain was hitting the roof. I looked at my mom. Her shoulders were slumped. She was rubbing her temples. She already knew she messed up. She was just tired and hungry and taking it out on a kid making minimum wage. I took a breath. I was scared to say it. But I looked at the jar in my mind. I knew what my job was. I said, "Mom, you were wrong." She froze. She looked at me like I'd grown a second head. She opened her mouth to defend herself, to say she was tired, to say it was his fault. But she closed it. She looked at the cashier, who was staring at his shoes. She didn't say anything to me. She just put the car in drive. She pulled forward, parked the car around the side of the building, and turned off the engine. She said, "Stay here." She got out. I watched through the rain streaked window. She walked back into the store. I saw her talk to the manager. I saw her talk to the cashier. She was smiling. She pulled a $20 bill out of her wallet and left it in the tip jar. The cashier smiled back. His shoulders relaxed. When she got back in the car, she didn't start the engine right away. She just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, breathing. Finally, she looked at me. Her eyes were wet. She said, "If I can't be wrong in front of you, I'm not teaching you to be good. I'm just teaching you to be fake. Thank you for checking me, Kai." I was out of line. She reached into the center console, where she kept the mason jar. She took out a seed. She handed it to me. I opened the lid, and I planted it. "Plink," she said, "good people correct each other. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Day 30. The harvest. The jar was full. 30 seeds. Some were smooth, some were cracked, some were dark, some were light. But they were all there. My mom came into the backyard carrying a small terracotta pot. The soil was dark and rich. In the center of the pot, pushing up through the dirt, was a bright, vibrant green. 2 little sunflower leaves, reaching up toward the sky. She set the pot on the patio table. She said, "Day 1 to day 30. You did the work. You planted the seeds." I reached out and touched the tiny leaves. They were so soft. They felt like life. I looked up at her. I said, "So, I'm good now. I finished the assignment. I'm a good person." She laughed. But it was a soft, gentle laugh. She knelt down in the grass so we were exactly eye to eye. She said, "No, baby. You're not finished. You're just practicing. Good isn't a trophy you win on day 30. It's not a medal you put on a shelf." She picked up the full mason jar. She closed the lid tight. She put it in my hands. It was heavy. She said, "Jar's yours now. Keep it on your desk. But you don't need it anymore. Because real goodness is what you do on day 31. It's what you do when nobody gives you a seed. When nobody's watching. When it costs you everything, and there's no jar to put it in." I looked at the jar. Then I looked at the little green sprout. I opened the lid of the jar. I reached in and took out one single seed. Just one. I put it in the front pocket of my jeans. I patted it to make sure it was there. I said, "I got it, Mom." Day 31. 3 months later. It was a Thursday. The school cafeteria was loud. The smell of tater tots and floor wax was thick in the air. Kids were shouting, throwing food, running around. I was sitting with Marcus and Jamal. We were laughing about something stupid. Then, I saw him. A new kid. His name was Lewis. He had just transferred from a school across the state. He was standing by the salad bar, holding his lunch tray with both hands. He looked terrified. His eyes were darting around the room, looking for a place to sit. The table with the cool kids was full, and they weren't looking at him. The table with the gamers was full. Lewis was completely alone. He started walking toward an empty table in the corner, his shoulders hunched up to his ears. I saw him. I stopped laughing. I reached into my pocket. My fingers brushed against the dry, hard shell of the sunflower seed. I rolled it between my thumb and index finger. I felt the tiny ridge where it had been attached to the flower. I stood up. Marcus said, "Where you going, man? The bell's about to ring." I said, "Be right back." I walked across the cafeteria. I picked up my own tray. I walked over to the corner table. I sat down directly across from Lewis. He looked up, startled. He clutched his tray tighter. I smiled. I said, "You play Galaxy Guardians?" He shook his head. He was shy. He looked down at his tater tots. I said, "That's okay. I can teach you. It's pretty easy once you get the combo rules." I paused. I looked him in the eye. I said, "My mom says everyone starts with empty pockets. But we can fix that." I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the single sunflower seed. I slid it across the plastic table. It stopped right next to his milk carton. He looked at it. He picked it up. He didn't know what it was for. He didn't know the story of the jar, or the 30 days, or the bruised seed. But he looked at me. And he smiled. A real, big smile. Outside the cafeteria windows, in the parent pickup line, my mom was sitting in her car. She was watching through the glass. She didn't wave. She didn't come inside. She just put her hand flat against her chest, right over her heart. Like she was making sure it was still beating. Like she was proud of the rhythm. Lewis and I started talking. We laughed about the terrible cafeteria pizza. I don't even remember what else we talked about. But I remember feeling light. I remember feeling like my pocket was empty, but my hands were full. Goodness isn't taught. It's passed. So, what seed will you plant today?